SEARCA remained dedicated to promoting agricultural and rural development in Southeast Asia during the third year of our 11th five-year plan. SEARCA's work is organized around three core programs that targeted 7 priority areas, aligned with the UN SDGs. To achieve our goals, we worked on 5 key fronts. We prioritized providing scholarships and training to cultivate leaders in ARD. The scholarships were funded collaboratively by SEARCA and partner institutions. We also aided scholars in their studies and research dissemination. Furthermore, we supported institutional development of higher education institutions and engaged in multi-country higher education networks. Moreover, SEARCA used innovation to inspire youth involvement in agriculture. We recognized the role of policies in agricultural transformation and conducted extensive research to inform program development and policy support. Our research contributed to creating an enabling environment with farmer-centric policies. SEARCA backed agri-tech solutions to improve approaches at various points in the value chain. We had undertakings that help boost innovation commercialization in academic and research institutions. Scholarships, research, and innovation grants demonstrated SEARCA's ongoing investment in ARD. Additionally, SEARCA prioritized initiatives that advanced food and nutrition security. The Center valued collaboration in its endeavors, seeking partnerships and fostering knowledge sharing for successful development solutions. SEARCA's solid financial standing, achieved through prudent fiscal management and robust cash flow, was complemented by the exceptional commitment and expertise of its staff, consultants, and senior fellows. We remain committed to helping make Southeast Asia's agri-food sector better, bigger, and smarter.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 4 to 6 webinar of the SEARCA Online Learning and Virtual Engagement, or SOLVE, today, March 20. My name is Sunny from SEARCA. I'll be your moderator for today's webinar. And this learning event is in line with the International Women's Month. And our topic is Solve Gender Inequalities, Advancing the Gender Agenda in Food Systems. Relevant to this topic, we're honored to have 2 women experts with us today to share their research and practical experiences with case studies from the Philippines and Papua New Guinea. On to our program for this morning, quite a straightforward proceeding. After a few housekeeping reminders from yours truly, we will jump right into the presentations of our distinguished guests, and there will be an open forum after the 2 presentations where you, our audience, will get to ask relevant questions about their topics. We then request our audience for feedback and formally close the webinar. All right, so some reminders. This is how you can ask a question to our speakers. If you are tuned in via SEARCA's Facebook page, you may type your questions in the comment section. Please do not forget to include your location or country of origin in every question that you will be posting. If you registered and tuned in via Zoom, please post your questions or comments in the Q&A section located at the bottom or top of your screen, depending on the gadget that you are using. And also, please include your location or country of origin. Regarding the copies of the presentations, for you to access the recording as well, this webinar will be made available on SEARCA's Facebook page and YouTube channel. So please follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Today's presentation slides will also be available on the SEARCA website, and the slides shown during the past webinars have already been posted there, and you can visit us at www.searca.org. Okay, so I guess we can start. We now over 100 attendees, both via Zoom and Facebook Live. Maybe we can start with our presentations. Our first speaker is Barbara Pamphilon, Professor of Community Learning and Development, Faculty of Education at the University of Canberra, Australia. She is the founding director of Center for Sustainable Communities, where she is also the director of the Family Farm Teams program. The focus of her work is on gender transformation with a particular emphasis on rural communities with low education and literacy. Here to share with us her experience in Papua New Guinea, please welcome Professor Barbara Pamphilon.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to be virtually meeting everybody and hopefully looking forward to hearing Glory's work and your questions, how they meld together, or maybe they don't. We'll find out. So just stay with me for 30 seconds while I share my screen and just take a second to go into the full screen. Okay, I hope that's okay for everybody and it can all be seen well.
Yes,
Good.
Barbara.
Thank you. Good. So yes, as Sonny said, my work is in Papua New Guinea, and as you'll see, my title today is Moving from Gender Awareness to Gender Transformation. And now, why is that not? There we go. So just as an overall background to start with, and I know many of you already know this, so I'm just using this as a bit of a reminder. The gender integration continuum is one that I find quite helpful when thinking about gender transformation, because what that continuum alerts us to is that very often people see the world in a way gender neutral or gender blind. And classically, that's when people in our field talk about farmers. And farmers are men or women, they're farmers. But we all know that underneath the word farmer is a lot of complexity, including whether it's a male farmer or a female farmer, or a younger male farmer, or a younger woman farmer. So when we look at a gender continuum, it's inviting us to really move towards being gender aware, which is a lot of the research side of the work, and also gender responsive. But the challenge for me is that when we see a continuum like that, where we're moving from gender neutral to gender aware and responsive, within that, how do we actually facilitate sustainable change? And that is what I want to focus on today. So let me just tell you a little bit about Papua New Guinea. As you'll see from the picture there, Papua New Guinea is at the top of Australia, and I think people might be aware that the island of Papua is now two countries with Papua New Guinea that I'm talking about being one half of the original island. Oh, well, it's still there, isn't it? 11.1 million people, which is one of the biggest countries in the Pacific, particularly in the what we call Pacific Island states. In Papua New Guinea, 85% of people live in rural areas. There are some big cities, only 3, but nearly all of the country, their income is semi-subsistence farming. There is some commercial farming, but generally the majority of the people in Papua New Guinea are semi-subsistence smallholders. I don't know if you can see on the picture there, but it's very challenging geography in Papua New Guinea, very high mountains with fertile valleys in between them, and then some lowland area, but generally quite mountainous, and therefore access is difficult. And the other thing about Papua New Guinea that I think makes it stand out as a place when you're working there is there's 837 unique languages. Now here I'm talking about languages, not dialects. And that means that there is a lingua franca for the country, a pidgin language called Tok Pisin. But why it is such a complex area to help with rural development is that you go over one mountain and you're in a totally new language group. And so a lot of the development of PNG has been hampered by its geography and then the different languages. However, that is breaking down and changing, but nevertheless, if you can imagine 837 languages gives you that sort of cultural uniqueness in the areas too. So what I wanted to do to move into how do we work, the work that we've been doing in Papua New Guinea and what I want to share today is give you a little bit of context first about the context of the adult learners, the adult smallholder farmers. So as I mentioned, semi-subsistence farming is the main way of farming, and there's a lot of good food and vegetables grown that can grow there, very fertile country. However, it has the second highest child stunting rate in the world. It nearly at 48% in some areas and down to 30 in others. So that really talks to the fact that where rural development plays such an important part in Papua New Guinea, because the good foods do grow there, and the balanced foods, the food system will adequately feed the country. But why our work focuses on adults as learners is really trying to look at this context and then from that consider how we can work with the whole of a family for the benefit of women, which I'll come back to. There's very limited education in PNG. For example, most women in the highlands areas only complete grade 3. Men may go on to grade 5, grade 6, but you would realise how much that affects how the access people have to information and knowledge beyond the very important knowledge they already have as farmers who have learned over generations about farming the land. And when I say limiting education, until recently, teacher education in Papua New Guinea was only a 2-year diploma. So they are now moving towards degrees, but many of the teachers have limited repertoires for teaching, which again is an issue. And as far as training for development, women have very little access to training, mainly because of safety issues, cost issues, travelling to large distances, these sorts of things I think many people in today's webinar would know about in many countries. But the other very big limiting component is that the knowledge transfer approach has been the major approach for training. In other words, people have come in with expert knowledge and told people how they can improve their life, improve their farming. And again, as I will go into in the next slide, for women particularly, if we look at the fact that there is very poor nutrition, very poor health for women and children, that there is very limited education, the knowledge transfer approach is very ineffective for women because it sees the women as what Freire calls empty vessels. So I'll just go on and unpack that a little bit. In thinking about learning, I think you can divide it into two general approaches, in that the transfer of knowledge is one, but the way that I work with adult learners wherever I am is remembering this very, very old saying that the mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be kindled. And we have a number of adult learning theorists who help us understand more about that. For example, Malcolm Knowles, he talks about, he's got 7 principles, well, there's a few more these days, about readiness of learners. Where do they want to learn? What's important to them is the place in which we can join the learner. And also, the really effective learning happens when it links to prior knowledge. And we all know that farmers have massive prior knowledge, not all of it still current today, but much of it. Then Paulo Freire, who people may know from his emancipatory education approach or liberatory learning, he really talks about that issue that I mentioned before, of seeing learners not as an empty vessel to be filled with outside knowledge, but in working from a problem-posing approach. What are the problems, the issues that people are trying to address? And that's where we can connect. And then the other one I use that really informs and helps me a lot working in the field is the David Kolb, is his experiential action learning cycles. And of course, anyone who works in training or any form of learning knows that we're looking at knowledge, attitudes, skills, and particularly relevant to women in Papua New Guinea is their aspirations. Because if you can think again back to that difficult geography, the isolation of many people in these big valleys, aspirations sometimes are very limited because of the experience of knowing the wider world, although of course that's changing with the internet. So as you'll see in the picture here, this is how I use the experiential learning cycle of David Kolb. And you'll see, many of you will know it, and many of you will pick the spelling mistake there, but never mind. that learning, you can start at the concrete experience, then look at reflection, making meaning of that experience, but then in plain English words, the next part of Kolb's work is, well, other than our own knowledge, what's some big thinking or abstract conceptualization, as it's known in the literature that can help us step away from our daily experience, and then from that think about how we can change and how that creates action learning cycles, as in the picture. So when we work with farmers, we actually bring this, that's why there's words in their language on that picture. We actually spend part of our training before we get into any activities, any topic, is sharing this and doing small group work so that people can see that they may not have gone to school, but they can use this action learning cycle very, very thoroughly. So if we then have a look, move closer to the topic of today, gender, farming, and learning. In Papua New Guinea, it's commonly said, both by people within the country and from outside, that in smallholder farming roles are complementary. Men have their roles and women have their roles. However, you scratch the surface of that and the roles might be complementary, but the workload isn't. Nor is the decision-making, nor is the linking of the farm benefits to the family. So complementary, yes, but equal or with any equity, definitely not. So in working as we do, which I will be explaining next, we're really aiming to try to surface the individual knowledge of women and men doing all of this in group work. So we really help them value the knowledge of women and the knowledge of men, and that they learn together. Also, traditional knowledge is very important. Be it traditional knowledge about crops, traditional knowledge about ways of looking after the land. It's the knowledge transfer model tends to leave people thinking that the new knowledge is the best knowledge, but of course that needs to come together. So the program I'm going to share with you that we've developed here at the University of Canberra, and it's being used around the Pacific now, is helping farming families to have shared goals, to think as a family about their goals, to see the value of shared decision-making. And finally, through that, to work towards gender transformation, which is, if you can see there, that it is moving on that continuum from gender blind, the process with the farmers, gender blind to gender aware, then to gender responsive, and we're aiming for gender transformation. And so let me just explain the ways that we find for women, how we work with farming families in a way that will benefit gender equity in the family. So we're trying in the learning activities to help them move from subsistence thinking to family farm business thinking. And those of you who have worked with subsistence farmers, you know how much that's living in the moment and doing things when the opportunity is there. And so what we do in all of our work is at a village level, we ask for people to volunteer to come to the training and then become village community educators for their area. So straight away, we're valuing them as not only people who can learn, but people who can teach others. And then from our work, we then look to help those areas connect to local training provided by local agencies. Now, of course, again, we would be able to probably find funding to bring training in, but the point is it's about local strengthening, building families to build communities. Therefore, local agencies have massive, massive relevance. They're there for the long haul. So in thinking about equitable farming, we've developed a program that is called the Family Farm Teams. But the important part for gender transformation is that we're working with family pairs. We invite a family to send one male and one female from each family. Now, it doesn't mean it needs to be a married couple, because we are very aware, as everyone in the audience would be, that families are very diverse. It could be a widow and her older son. It could be a grandfather with his daughter-in-law. It could be that any male and female that the family thinks will be a good pair to lead their family. Of course, it is often couples, but we're always very careful not to invite couples only. So there are 4 modules that I'll put them all up here, that are sequential ones of experiential learning activities, all for low literacy families. You don't have to read and write, but you're drawing. If you can write a few words, it helps. But that is the idea, that the activities in the family farm teams are there to help people use those very learning activities in their own home and then in their village. So starting off with the concept of working as a family team, a balanced family team for family goals, shared goals, agreed goals, goals that bring us as a family onto the same path. Planning your family farm as a family team. Again, that one sounds very logical, of course, but many subsistence farmers actually plan at the seasonal level, but not at long term. And one of the biggest problems around poverty is that people spend with their subsistence thinking, spend when the money comes in, but then when they're needing new seedlings or crops, they're looking for a donor. But planned farming can change that. Feeding your family farm team, you might think, oh, this is one for women. It is very much for men and women together, because a lot of the feeding of the family team is helping people see the huge value of their locally grown vegetables and how much money can be saved, how much health can be gained from not reducing store-bought food. And of course, communicating and decision-making as a family team. We all benefit from thinking that through. So let me link that to gender transformation, because there's some principles in our work that we hope are the building blocks to move from that gender blind to the gender aware and gender responsive to actual transformation. And the first one is that if people are able to have experiential learning activities that make sense for their place and their family and their opportunities and their challenges, then the family pairs can apply that together with their own family to develop sustainable family futures. The idea being that that all of the activities are designed that you can go home that day and for the next few weeks sit under a tree with your family, sit in the house with the older family members, whatever is right for that family. And the man and woman together are becoming leaders in the family in a new way by sharing that experiential learning. And really key from what we've found in our research and evaluation is that moving from semi-subsistence to equitable and effective planned farming is all about, it starts with the family having agreed roles that build on the strengths of men, women, youth, includes the older family members with their wisdom and cultural knowledge. But that family has together decided on their goals and their 5-year goals, their 3-year, their 1-year goal. And key to this is that men change and women change. So that's where, for me, gender transformation hits the sweet spot, is both men and women change. There's no blame. It's about how can we use our strengths, the strengths of the men in the family, the strengths of the women. And some of the changes, as you can understand, it's a mindset change. And we hear often that people saying things like this quote from a Highlands woman, my husband and I work together as best friends, and I'm so happy. And in Papua New Guinea, where it's got some of the highest gender-based violence, if men and women are starting to talk together and work together and start to be best friends, something is changing. So just in summary, I just wanted to emphasize that the family is the target group of all of our work. The family, it's the unit, but also it's the learning unit. But linking it to the International Women's Month, women are the impact group. So it's for me essential to focus on the family, but what drives our work is that we know the benefit it will lead to women and how it can change women's lives. But for sustainable change, which is where I started, it needs to be a whole of family change. So thank you. If you would like to know any more about the family farm teams, there's the QR code. And I look forward to hearing people's responses. And also, we've got a short time together. I'd be also very happy to be in email contact with anybody who would have any questions after the webinar. So back to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the insightful presentation, Professor Barbara. Very interesting to learn from your perspective that the knowledge transfer approach, it may not be effective for women because it looks at them as an empty vessel. So good to have those adult learning theories that you've mentioned. You also highlighted an interesting approach of having both men and women in leadership roles in farming, because typically we see farming as a man's enterprise. And family goals and working as best friends, or for both the mothers and fathers in the family, it's a really interesting perspective. So thank you very much, Barbara, for your presentation. We'll catch you later for the open forum. I'm sure our audience will have lots of questions about your presentation. So
Thank you.
thank you, Barbara. We now proceed to our next speaker, Dr. Glory D. Romo. She is an assistant professor at the School of Management from the University of the Philippines, Mindanao, where she teaches subjects in the Master in Management program. And she is one of the 2021 Merrill Williams Fellows in the Asia Pacific, funded by ACR and delivered by Gender Equity in Agriculture Research and Development in partnership with the University of New England, Australia, and Coffee International. Her research and extension projects focus on complex adaptive systems thinking, strategic planning, value chain, gender studies, and organizational resilience. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our second speaker, Dr. Glory D. Romo.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Sunny. Good morning from the Philippines. Let me just share my slide. So I will be talking about the challenges and directions in gender research in agri, aquatic, and natural resources sector in the Philippines. I will be sharing some of the results of our project that was funded by the DOSTP card. So I will be talking a bit about gender in the Philippines. What is the status when it comes to AANR and the statistics, our gender research, and what are the challenges? And of course, we convert this to opportunities and some developments in gender research in AANR and potential directions. So if we look at the screen, we see that there's a minimal increase over a period of 13 years for crops, livestock, poultry, fisheries, and even at the level of the agri-fisheries as a whole. So if we also look at the percentage share to the gross domestic product, we see that the agriculture, forestry, and fisheries, the growth of this from 2018 to 2022 is lower than the growth in the gross domestic product. So if we want to look for more information about women and men about in agri, aquatic, and natural resources sector, we have limited information. This is just an example that we can see from a lot about women's access to resources, access to credit when it comes to by subsector like agri, aquatic, and natural resources sector. So this information is not reflected in our national data. And we also saw that the gender equality ranking of the Philippines improved in 2023 from 19th. So it's we have a relatively higher ranking, and when we look at the Women, Peace and Security Index as well,
Ma'am, do you think your bandwidth po
Philippines
is
has 0.612, where 1 is the highest for women, peace, and security. Hear me? Sunny, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, you can turn off your video. Medyo choppy lang.
Okay. Yes,
Thank
I'll
you.
just turn it off. Okay, so as you can see, the Philippines has 0.612, which is relatively higher, but the highest WPS index is Denmark. But this is not actually reflected in the ground. Say if we go to the MILF camps, the index is below 0.5 or even below 0.4. We did a study. We actually helped VSO Philippines to conduct a study about women, peace, and security in 6 MILF camps in Mindanao. So it's really important to examine each area when it comes to the subset sectors, so we know the context and we know what the specific circumstances of the women and men are in each of the subsector. So actually, because they have less access to resources and they have less access to training as well, whenever we do research, we try as much as possible to also conduct an extension activity as part of our service to giving back to the community. So I'll just be sharing a bit about the project that is funded by the DOSTP card. Basically, this seeks to understand the typology of the existing gender research literature in the Philippines and to establish the database of published and unpublished paper on gender studies in AANR. But we were not able to cover the reports of the international organizations that have conducted capacity building activities in different areas in the Philippines. So this is pretty much limited to the state universities and colleges, as well as government agencies and the published literature. So basically, this is knowing what we know versus what we do not know. So this will be used as an input to the agenda and framework of the OSTP card when it comes to gender research. So this is what we found out. We were only able to access see 197 relevant research papers. And in fact, we have less unpublished literature. Despite having communicated with at least 95 universities and colleges. So we sent a call for abstracts so we can consolidate all the gender research that has gender research projects that have been implemented in the Philippines. Uh, Maybe like less than 50, and we have only 2 for natural resource. And we tried to assess and understand the focus of each of the literature, and there's varying level of analysis. So it's really hard to compare the studies that have been conducted, because for each particular topic, this might have been conducted in one area, but we cannot compare this with another area because there's no national level study that is being conducted on a specific topic and on a specific subsector, which can actually give us information on how what interventions are best for each of the subsector for gender responsive research. And in addition to that, we also tried to look for the different studies that might fit in any of the PICARD body, OST PICARD banners, such as the policy, research and advocacy, capacity building, and research and development governance, because all of these inputs will be considered by the OST PICARD in terms of capacity building and the research directions in the next few years. We also noticed that in most of these studies, there's no examination of intersectionality, which is really quite important when we talk about gender in any of the subsectors that I mentioned, specifically the AA and R. When we talk about intersectionality, it is actually a recognition that there is an overlapping of social identities and related systems of domination or discrimination or disadvantages. So this is actually a first step for us to be able to design, probably in the future, some projects that would contribute to the gender transformation. So in fact, we extended the deadline for the call for abstracts several times. One of the sharings of the research don't have any idea at all what gender research is. So it's so hard for them to risk studies that were conducted in AA and R. So universities and colleges, and we conducted visits to 5 state universities and colleges in Luzon, 6 private and state universities and colleges in Visayas, and 10 state universities and colleges in Mindanao. So our target was at least 5 per major groups of islands. For those who are not in the Philippines, we have 3 major groups of islands in the Philippines: Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. And apart from that, we also conducted key informant interviews in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, so that we could get their inputs and how we can move forward when it comes to gender research in AA and R. So we had 3 for agriculture, aquatic, and natural resources. But for each of the subsectors, we have a session for Luzon. For each subsector, we have representatives from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. And because we found out that, there's really limited, there's a need for the researchers, especially the young ones, to be exposed to the gender research methodologies. We also we also offered a webinar on gender research in agriculture, aquatic, and natural resources. So we invited experts to share their research outputs as well as their practical knowledge on how to conduct research. So there was this session for engendering research and why it matters, as well as we were able to partner with two consortia in Mimaropa and Caraga. For this training, our partner is one consortium in Caraga region. And what is the good thing about this? We notice, and based on our sharing and the sharing of the other researchers, it's so hard for them, it's challenging for them to translate their knowledge about Hagadaga, or the Harmonized Gender and Development Guidelines in research. So they can do that when it comes to monitoring or really understanding if gender has been mainstreamed in the operations of the universities. However, it's so challenging for them to apply that in research. And apart from that, we also found out that the private universities have limited access to training on gender research as well as harmonized guidelines, harmonized gender and development guidelines. We also offered a webinar on women and development research, feminist paradigms, epistemologies, and methodologies, because we found out that, you know, most of us understand probably what Hagadaga is and how it is applied in our operations, in on how important it is in gender mainstreaming. However, we don't have really an understanding on where it is anchored on. So, but we had limited number of participants because it was a workshop type of training. And so we were able to reach Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. We targeted at least 50% female for each of the activities that we conducted. And so these are the challenges that we encountered in that they shared when it comes to agri, aquatic, and natural resources. So they are interested to conduct gender research. However, they meet a lot of challenges. For example, they want to conduct research, but there's lack of incentives or support to pursue this endeavor, and also an issue of multiple burdens that when she stopped doing research and when she returned to doing research 9 years after, it was hard for her because she did nothing in relation to that for 9 years, and she was hoping that in some of the projects the women could still be involved even if they're busy, if they're busy with their families, at least even if it's just a minor role, so that the transition when they go back to full-blown research again is not that difficult. Of course, it's also difficult for them because the teaching load is conduct research, and oftentimes they have to bring home their schoolworks. And these researchers, the young researchers, also share that they have limited opportunities. They really don't know. They are interested to learn how to conduct research, but they really don't know how to access that funding or that opportunity. We can see similar sharing in the aquatic resources subsector, but I would just like to add also that these researchers share that there is a need for more opportunities for training on gender mainstreaming and responsiveness among university leaders, So they will have a comprehensive understanding on how they can support, especially the young researchers. And there's also difficulty when it comes to conducting field work, like, for example, the menstrual cramps, separation anxiety from children, access to restrooms, clean water, and accessibility of the study area, and even safety. So we see similar entries also in the natural resources subsectors. So I'm not going to add more information about it. So anyway, there's a group of women, the graduates of Merrill Williams Fellowship. I'm one of them, and we realized and we recognized the importance of sharing information and inviting experts and sharing their knowledge when it comes to how to conduct research. So in 2021, we and leadership in agriculture. But we did not focus only on the research. We also invited from Timor-Leste and Miss Ogana Erdene. They shared about their journey as women leader. Dene from Mongolia shared her journey from corporate to farm life. So it was a good venue for women and men to share their experiences. So instead of just limiting our discussion about research, it was a very productive session because we were able to share about our experiences as academicians, as researchers, and how difficult the journey was to reach the top. And it was fortunate for us because we were able to also invite Dr. Erica Valerio. She shared about the Designing a Gender Inclusive Research Project. And our second international conference on WELA, we call this WELA, the Women Empowerment and Leadership in Agriculture. This was held in Naga City last March 12 to 13, 2024. And in relation to the conflict, the conflict in MILF camps and how that affects the AANR sector, we invited one speaker also who was an expert on the conflict and how it affects the women in farm. So because we think that this is very important, so we encourage the participants to just not look at the macroeconomic indicators and the statistics in the PSA, but also in the realities in the ground. And we will be hosting the WELA 3 in 2025. So this is actually more of an advocacy of the Merrill Williams Fellows in the Philippines. So there are eight of us. So it's really I think we were able to reach a lot of people, a number of researchers and stakeholders in the industry because we are from different institutions. So in fact, the Sibiswa, the university, Sibiswa institution hosted the event, and the president, a male, is very supportive of this event. And there's also another venue where we can share our research outputs, although it's not related in agriculture, aquatic, and natural resources. It was my second time to attend in this conference last year. This is organized by Women's and Gender Studies in Association of the Philippines. I like attending the event because it's an opportunity for me to talk with people who have researchers in gender, and also for us to share our what we learned from the ground and how we can help each other and collaborate in the future undertakings. And it's also nice that it was also a good opportunity to attend the conference in India with the theme from research to impact. In fact, I met Sonny and Barbara there. it's an opportunity for me to meet more people and to be exposed to maybe potential topics that can be replicated in the Philippines. And it was it's also a venue for us to talk informally about our experiences and about our advocacies when it comes to not only gender research, but also on how we are going to translate that to extension. So in fact, when we were organizing the second Duela conference, we contacted some of these people whom we met. And these are some of the directions that are very important in the succeeding years. Number one, I think it's really important to establish a community of practice or strengthen an existing COP or community of practice. Right now, there's an Australia Alumni Communities Philippines in the Philippines, and there's a number of communities of practice under the Australia Alumni Communities Philippines. And two of these are ANCOP, or Australia Alumni Agriculture, Aquatic and Natural Resources Community of Practice, and the Gender Equality, Disability and Social Inclusion, or GEDC, Community of Practice. So I'm mentioning GEDC because it's really important to also incorporate GEDC in whatever we do in AANR, or Agri, Aquatic and Natural Resources Community of Practice. In fact, we just conducted a strategic planning recently, and one of our activities is to organize a GEDC mainstreaming in agri-aquatic natural resources sector, because we also recognize that most of us don't really know how to go about it. Second is to initiate more capacity building activities, particularly the gender research methodology. But I am imagining a training that is specific per discipline, because it could be challenging for researchers whose background is in biology, but they really, even if they finish the program, they still don't know how to apply that in bio or conservation. And it could be one program and different levels. I think it would help if there's a self-paced program. Third is enhance the appreciation of the Hagadaga, or the Hagadaga in the research and development process. We, based on our talks with researchers in the Philippines from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, they really don't know how to link that in their research. And most of them, they just know how to compute, but they really don't know what it means essentially. And then number 4 is to identify which gender in agri-aquatic natural and natural resources sector indicators should also be included in the Philippine statistics, PSA statistics. 5 is to increase funding opportunities, particularly livestock and poultry, and aquatic and natural resources. And then for international organizations to continue to collaborate or strengthen collaboration with groups, institutions that are involved in the AANR sector, maybe that conference in India, if there's a similar conference here in the Philippines, wherein the stakeholders and the researchers from the different countries can attend, so that the researchers here in the Philippines have more opportunities to talk with these people from different countries. And next is, there are some projects now that are being undertaken, like capacity building of female farmers in organic vegetable production, gender responsive knowledge transfer pathways, gender responsive S&T strategies, gender analysis of research and development projects, and some commodities in AANR. And that ends my sharing. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. D. Another interesting presentation, and I'm sure our audience was able to pick some useful insights that they could take on in their own organization or their own research endeavors. You did mention about the lack of intersectionality in the gender studies, which it actually puts insight into future designs of researches and projects on gender in agri-aquatic and natural resources. And what you presented can actually guide our researchers and practitioners from the audience to consider the directions that you have mentioned, and definitely for our policymakers and decision makers to reflect and hopefully act on some of the challenges encountered by women researchers. And I must say, you've got some really thick narratives and insights from your research project. So thank you very much for sharing with us your experience. All right. So we now open the floor for questions from our audience. Actually, some of the questions have already came in, and we'd like to encourage the rest to please use the Q&A feature of the Zoom platform. And for those who are tuning in via Facebook Live, feel free to um, type in your questions, state your location and country. My colleagues will be able to gather those questions and pass it on to me so that I can ask the question to our speakers. All right. So maybe we can start with the first question. All right. There's one for Barbara. Have you considered the children's role in the family farm aside from the husband and wife as team or partners?
Yes, indeed. One of the first activities we do with a family in the training is we ask them to draw a circle on a piece of paper, and the family pair does this together, and they don't share it with anyone. And that's the whole family. And then we get them to list down the side who are the people in their family who are part of the farming. So there might be a grandparent, there may be a mother, father, there may be teenagers, young children. And then thinking of all the work that each of those people does for the family, meaning that includes housework and digging drains, and it includes looking after children, looking after chickens, growing, etc. And then together think about that family circle and draw the parts of the circle for each person. And so that's where children will have a little role, youth will have a role. In Papua New Guinea, women have many roles, men have some. And then we look at that from a gender lens and an age lens. So then we invite people, so we then talk, we don't ask people to share their own, but we put up our own example and talk of a family who wanted to make a change. But when we put children on, one message we make very clearly wherever we are, all of our village community educators, is children have one big job. It is to go to school. That is their biggest job. Therefore, that when you're thinking of what they can do on the farm and help in the family, we have to draw their bit as being mainly school. So yes, so when we do what we then call the first circle, often we say, it's an unbalanced family. And let's have a look, how can it be more balanced? And that's something then that the man and woman together talk about for their family. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much for that, Barbara. So children going to school, that's their main role. Well, also in my previous studies with young people, it's actually the same because their primary role is studying, but they can sometimes play some intermediary or knowledge brokering roles within the family farms. So thank you, Barbara. I think there's a relevant question here as well, but looking at the economic dimension of family farm teams. So have we look as well, based on your experience, have we look into the economic aspect? Have we seen improvements in livelihood as compared to prior practice, like having fragmented roles within the family?
Yes, yes. And thank you for that question. It certainly is a big part of our research. Unfortunately, because in Papua New Guinea, people don't have bank accounts and they don't keep records, we can't do a very simple change of income analysis. But what we do is a lot of research into the second module about planning your family farm is to plan the activities to meet the goals of your family. And that can be a new house, or not a new house, a permanent house. It might be clothes for the children. It might be some agricultural equipment. And so they plan across a year and then ongoing saving for the bigger things. And so we follow up the economic changes by asking about what of their family goals have they achieved and when. So within the first 6 months, a year, 2 years, and that's where we get the economic change. But the other one we measure very, very frequently, we start in a baseline and end line, is a baseline. Do you have enough food to feed your family? Always, sometimes, not always, a scale.
Mhm.
And then we ask after a year or 18 months of the program, and we do definitely find a shift that we rarely see people who do not have enough food to feed their family. And there's usually a big shift to I always have enough, which is an indicator of both changed agricultural practices and saving money. Yeah.
Thank you, Barbara. I think it's very nice to look into the context within the
Mm.
community, access to financing institutions. They don't have bank accounts. Actually, that merits another discussion for financial inclusion in
Oh,
rural
yes.
communities.
Yeah.
So, on to our next question. We have one for Dr. D. We have one from Thailand. She is just asking if UP Mindanao or are there any consortiums that offers regular gender trainings for AANR, particularly for SUCs in the country?
Yes, thank you for that question. Actually, the OSTP card has a gender and development unit, and this is offering online training. Although there's a specific program for targeted participants as well. Uh, in fact, the head of the GAD unit asked for some recommendations. Those who were in the list when we conducted the research, this particular research. And also in our group, we try to also include some training opportunities in our Wella conference. Hopefully, there will be more participants from the other countries. But also, I also hope that there are more venue for us to meet researchers coming from different countries, just like the opportunity when I met Sunny and Barbara in India.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. D. So they can look into like opportunities for training from Department of Science and Technology in the Philippines, and perhaps at the SUC level, at the university level, if there are some GAD initiatives, gender development initiatives at the university level. Now, also a question for you, Dr. D. In which particular AANR sectors do you think women are more likely to be vulnerable?
Um, Actually, in all areas, but I think we should also get more information in the natural resources. Uh, I, I I could say that women are very vulnerable in the natural resources sector, but it's still best to get more information because we don't have that at the moment. I only know at least 2 researchers who've conducted gender research in natural resources sector and conservation. So we need more of these studies. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dr. D. So from vulnerability, I'd like to ask this question in terms of best practices. So despite some of the challenges that you did mention about women researchers in ANR, what are some of the best practices that you are implementing in order to continue the advocacy among these women groups?
Yeah. Number one is that, we have the Merrill Williams Fellows in the Philippines have formed a very good friendship.
Mhm.
And since we are from the different universities, we always have a way of, just thinking out of, when we are on a trip, We just discuss informally, and then we translate that into a project, and we find partners. And because ACR, the Australian Center for International Agriculture Research, is so generous, they supported us in that conference. In fact, our training lead also funded the travel of our 3 researchers from Australia. So it's a good opportunity. We just, make this community bigger. So that's why I emphasize the community of practice, because it's not that formal, but you just meet because you have the same advocacy, and you just continue discussing what you want for men and women, and what's the role of men in developing women and making sure that women are empowered in this sector.
Thank you, Dr. D. It's great to know that you found a really good camaraderie within the fellowship, and that you were able to foster this friendship, and eventually for collaboration with different women researchers. And well, not just women researchers, but also men researchers in this area. So thank you for sharing that. And we hope that there are other like fellowships or opportunities where people can connect and collaborate. So yeah. So we have another question for Barbara. I think this is within the context of rural development. So are there local policies that enables the involvement of families in the farm? Or maybe in your researches or experience in PNG, how have we engaged with rural institutions or the local government to craft policies that would enable family farms?
Unfortunately, in Papua New Guinea, this is our biggest hurdle. The government has put a lot recently. The government in PNG changes fairly frequently. So does Australia, actually. We've changed prime ministers a bit too frequently. But the current government have four different agricultural ministries. Most countries will have one, but they've got a forestry, they've got agriculture, they've got coffee, so they do spend a lot of time developing policy, and some of their policy is fabulous, but they don't fund it. And so we find that most of our work, although there are very good, like NARI, the National Agricultural Research Institute, and a big training body for the country, Fresh Produce Development Agency, they are funded in such a small way, they can't do the reach they need. But we find most of the effective work we can do is through churches. The churches really are out in the most remote areas, and they've been there for years, and they are trusted, and therefore working through churches has been it's a real backbone to PNG's rural development. And so part of our family farm team's work at the moment is working with the 7 major churches, and working with them to help them, to support them to integrate family farm teams in their church programs. So one of the churches has integrated it in their training for new pastors. And so in their final year, they have family farm teams training so they can teach that, bring their different parish or whatever church type it is. So they are the most effective ways to work in PNG. Of course, we still knock on the doors of the provincial government. We still meet the ministers, and we are always given courteous welcomes, but we don't find they fund, as far as funding things. So for me, put your money where your mouth is, and so that's where our hardest work lies. But as I say, the churches are particularly significant in supporting, introducing family farm teams where it fits in their church program.
All right, thank you, Barbara. So I think we've found we've found some really useful insight in terms of engaging with the local churches to promoting not just their beliefs, but also on some practical knowledge about family farming. So thank you. That's a useful insight, especially here also in the Philippines. They tend to be located in a lot of our rural communities. So I think it's good to have engagements with farms and parishes as well. Thank you. So we have this question, a very specific question for Dr. D with regards to conducting research involving women in the community. Is it possible to to a woman in the community to conduct research and be funded, but they have not linked to any agriculture sector, academe, or government? They are just a plain housewives within the community.
Um, I know that the local government units, they have calls for proposals. That's one. Although I'm not sure if all LG local government units in the Philippines have this call for proposals. Number two, you can communicate with the barangay chairman, the village leader, because definitely that leader has a fund for that. So it just has to, the barangay leaders just need to have the buy-in, no, in that research. So for example, out of that research, can you help them prepare a barangay ordinance? So that would really be helpful. And also the municipalities and cities. In fact, I had a chance to talk with one of the vice mayors, and that was a few years ago when I did my dissertation, and he told me that, it would have been good if we have collaborations with academicians, because we don't have that skill in, writing and doing evidence-based research. So if we can collaborate, so we can use your research outputs and feed this into our ordinances. In fact, we also need help in writing the ordinances. So you can start having this informal discussion. Actually, most of my research projects just started with an informal discussion. It's just a meet up with a friend, another fellow, and then we were able to submit proposals. And I love talking with people from different disciplines, because we're able to think of a really, we think an ambitious project, but we were able to materialize this. So yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. D. So from informal conversations to actual collaborations and research projects, that's very interesting. And you pointed out like you really need to coordinate with the local government. In the case of Barbara, it's going down with the local churches. So it depends on finding the perfect institution or actors within the community that can help you conduct your research or provide any development intervention in the area. So we have here a question for both of you. Any one of you can respond to this. Is the idea of equal number of males and females in program implementation or project implementation gender compliant? Or would that suffice for compliance purposes? Having equal number of gender, male and female participants.
Glory, do you want to go first?
Okay. Um, it actually depends. Like in our programs, it might, we might need more male in that specific activity. But it also depends on our objectives. But essentially, the reason why we are targeting 50% is that we are able to enable women. We provide the women the opportunities to participate in any of the activities. So that's the logic of having more women. In fact, in some of our activities, we sometimes aim for more than 50% women, because they had less opportunities. They have less opportunities for training. They have less opportunities to access capital. They have less opportunities to talk with people. And there are times when, we have just recently our student conducted a project, and the student had to talk with both the wife and the husband to really get a comprehensive understanding of these women in the sugar industry, in the production area. And we have to, well, the student needs to be cautious in getting information. The man, the husband should not hear what the woman, or the wife is saying. Yes.
Yes, can I build on that? Because you can sometimes get 50-50, and the world, across the world, that's usually the male-female breakdown, roughly that. However, all the cultural and gender norms come into play in the group work, in the dynamics. And so, if you're facilitating a feedback session, men will take X amount of time and the women see no problem with it. They have a little time, the men have a large amount, because that's how that village area works. And so part of the work, I think, when we're working towards gender transformation is to do that gender change where you're modeling it. Firstly, you come in with a male, a male co-trainer. I, as a female, if we can get a male and a female trainer, we're showing a lot of things. But then also working with group processes that the group just get used to, such as whenever we ask for questions, we have one male, then a female, then a male, then a female, and we do it all the time. And it's not doing anything aggressive. It's just going, we need the different perspectives to learn together. And so a lot of the work is also, even when you get 50-50 in the room, you've still got a lot of gender transformative opportunities to use. Not because they're in the room doesn't mean they'll all have a place in the discussion or a full place. Yeah.
All right. Thank you for that, for those answers, Barbara and Dr. D. And thank you for that really interesting question from one of our audience. So the quick answer is it depends, based on the purpose of an intervention. So it also depends on the indicators that you have set, for instance, in your research project. So thank you for that. Okay, so one more question for the both of you. I think this is also coming from the perspective of a researcher. How can we improve data gathering from female participants so that we can really get worthwhile information? I have noticed that there is a tendency for females to just comment and same as others. Based on your experience, how can we improve on this?
Such a good question. There are so many ways that I just keep reading around this topic all the time. Any journal article that has has some ideas, it's really the community of practice that Gloria was talking about. This is where it becomes so important that you learn little things along the way. But there's some very basic things, of course, always interviewing women separately from the man. I mean, separately. I mean, on a different day, ideally. We tend to have a day for women to come, and we make no excuses because we want to focus on women, and a day for the men to come. And so therefore, it's a safer place for women, etc., etc. But also, I think in Papua New Guinea and a lot of the Pacific, because women have had very limited schooling, you need to move beyond surveys and structured interviews. We do artwork, we send people out, well, not always send them out with cameras, that can be a little dangerous, but send them around an area to take photographs of things, to come back and explain them, doing drawings, doing photo voice, things that enable women to speak about something from their lived experience, and then you deepen from that. And then the other thing that I find is always fabulous is getting women into age groups. The young girls straight out of school, the young mothers, the middle-aged mothers, the older grandmothers, etc. And because that's a level where they share even more and they deepen each other's thinking. But a great topic, and I'm sure we could talk forever on that.
Yeah, in my experience, first we need to know the dynamics in the community. You need to know who who among these people are friends and not so friends. Because if you don't know this, you know, it might affect the way you conduct your research. Second, you need to identify who have the great influence in the community. So you check, I normally ask people before I conduct the study, which of these women are influential in the community, because that would mean the participants can, you know, share more about this information. And I think what's interesting is that when I was doing my PhD, it's important to also, you know, live in the area. When you live in the area, these women trust you more. When you buy your daily needs, your food every day, you get to talk with them on informally. And then later, after 2 weeks, they're more receptive and they're more welcoming. Next is that, you know, there's this project where we train the um, youth in conducting the field the data collection using Kobo. So it was also a good chance opportunity for this youth to learn how to use Kobo. And because we know that if we go to the area, we cannot get the information that we need for the survey. So we have to train the local people. And especially in that particular project, it's conducted in an MILF camp. So we cannot go around go to the different barangays. We just cannot do that. We can go to one specific area, just one specific area, you know, staying there for like a month just to collect information is just impossible. To also to look for to these community members. For instance, in that Women, Peace and Security study, this was conducted in 6 MILF camps. Actually, I was just a volunteer, but the VSO Philippines tapped the NGOs, 3 NGOs that have access to the different communities and are highly influential. And so they were the ones, these institutions trained the locals also to conduct the data collection. So we just went to different areas for, they call that feedbacking session, so that we can validate the information that we got. And also when we formulate the questions, because it also matters, like, you know, these participants might not want to answer some questions that are offensive in that particular area or in their culture. So we have to ask the NGOs. We ask them if sure. So that's all. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. D and Dr. Barbara, for your very nice insights when it comes to navigating this power dynamics within your participants, and also the dynamics within the community. And what you've shared are actually useful methods for our audience who would want to be studying more about, for those who would want to conduct more researches on the ground. So thank you for that. In the interest of time, as much.
Can I just add one? Can I add one tiny little
Sure.
bit?
Go
I
ahead,
loved what Gloria said. I think the other thing in the community is looking for male champions. You know, genuine male champions. I'd add that one too, because they're there, but they're sometimes hard to find until they're almost encouraged or given permission. So I just wanted to add that too. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that insight, Dr. Barbara. So finding male champions, so not just women champions, not just playing the dynamics, power dynamics, but also finding the right champions within the community. It could be like the local officials, champions. It could be your friends, champions, like Dr. D. It started out with conversations with friends. So thank you very much to our audience for putting those questions, and to our esteemed speakers for responding to them very graciously. So allow me to wrap up this webinar from what we have discussed from the presentations of Dr. Barbara and Dr. Glory D. So we've seen some shifting of power dynamics in family farms, making it truly transformative by putting women as pairs with men within the family farming teams with shared goals and shared decision making from the presentation of Dr. Barbara. And what I also got was about valuing them, both men and women, not just as people who can learn, but also people who can share knowledge about farming and agriculture in general. And based on our conversations, we learned that advancing the gender agenda truly requires transformative approaches. And Dr. Barbara told us about their experience, and we hope that our audience would take inspiration from your work into integrating it or contextualizing it within their own work for their own countries or communities. On the other hand, Dr. D presented some challenges and directions in AANR gender research from the perspective of women and young researchers. And we hope that these challenges would challenge our local and national institutions to do better in terms of providing appropriate and sufficient support for, you did mention about capacity building, funding, incentives, and other enabling mechanisms to carry on and to translate their research into practice. And we're very glad to have two presentations that highlighted both the gender practice and gender research dimensions in agri-food systems. We have learned both the existing evidence of gender transformative approaches at the community level, as well as some program and policy recommendations to advance the gender agenda in agri-food systems, both in research and in practice. So we hope that through this webinar, we were able to nurture the discussions on the gender agenda in food systems, but we even hope further that our audience, especially those who ask questions, would be able to translate these conversations to on-the-ground actions. As many of you here, I think are researchers, are practitioners from the university, from government agencies, or civil society organizations. So now we'd like to hear from you as well. I think, do we have the slide flash on your screen? Is our feedback and request for webinar certificate form. You may access this through the link, if you can see it here, or by scanning the QR code. So any request for e-certificates can also be channeled through this form. So please make sure that you fill it out completely. But more importantly, we'd like to use this form to get your feedback. So please do share your insights from the webinar from our two speakers, as well as any recommendations for our future webinars. We'll give our audience a few minutes to fill it out, but in the meantime, perhaps would like to hear some closing statements from our resource speakers, probably your advice on aspiring gender researchers as well. So let's hear it first from Dr. D, please.
Yes, so I would just like to reiterate that it's important to initiate formal, especially informal discussion with your friends, and find the people who share your passion and advocacy. Try to reach out to universities. They have the social media pages, and I think they're really very responsive to questions. And try to maybe establish your own community of practice in your area, because once you have this, you can link this community of practice with another community of practice or another group of people who share the same passion. These groups can amplify your voice, and also altogether you can collectively pursue your advocacy, and start looking for training as well, because there's actually a number of training that is available online, and that's one of the good things when COVID-19 pandemic happened, because before it's so hard to access training. In fact, the DOSTP card right now has a training, I think on March 25. Maybe you can search for that particular training, and then attend conferences, because these will also broaden your understanding and your world. This will also broaden your friendships that can help you reach your goals, not only the professional but also personal goals. And also try to look for, as Barbara mentioned, the male who can help you, promote your advocacy.
Right. Yes, thank you for the opportunity to say a closing word. I think being a gender researcher is really challenging, but there is nothing more important than having a world that's peaceful, where men and women live together and have shared goals. And so it's a very important agenda. And many of you would know the sensitivities in doing gender research, and particularly the notion of do no harm, where we go in and make sure that we are doing our work in a way that will do no harm. But I always like to add to that, definitely, ethically, we must be careful to do no harm, but we must be doing some good. So never would I go in and do research about a community on a community. It's go in and do research with women, for women, and by women, and make sure whatever you're doing, you're engaging in the idea that you're trying to find the opportunities for change. Wherever you are, there are different opportunities for change. And that's the exciting research. You might have all this literature, and you have to for journal articles and to ground your thinking. But when you're in the field, you're looking for the moments, the opportunities for change, the little moments of change. And that's how I manage a busy agenda, is where I feel and think there's a change. That's where I put my effort. So I always do no harm, but equally always be looking, do some good. And then no matter how busy you get, you're into a space where you know you're making a difference, and it doubles the reward, I think.
Well done. Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. D and Dr. Barbara, for those really useful insights. We're happy to have you with us this morning. Thank you for making time. And to our audience, thank you very much. I hope you were able to get some inspiration. And hopefully, if you plan to connect with these two esteemed resource speakers, please feel free to connect with them. We will make the slides available on our website, as well as the recording of this webinar. So I think that's it. That ends our 46 Solve. Thank you to all our attendees, and of course to our two empowering resource speakers for being with us today. We hope to see you in the next webinar sometime in June. So please stay tuned for announcements on SEARCA's social media channels. Again, if you haven't done the feedback form, it's available via Facebook. We have the link, type in there, and also in Zoom. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Barbara, and thank you, Dr.
Thank you so
Gardy. So,
much.
thank you so much. My name is Sunny on behalf of SEARCA. Maraming salamat po, and we wish you all a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.